was that? What the hell was that?
It was the Messerschmitt 262, the world's first operational jet fighter.
Was wollen wir trinken? 7 Tage lang. Was wollen wir trinken? So ein Durst.
Was wollen wir trinken? 7 Tage lang. Was wollen wir trinken? So ein Durst.
At the end of World War II, when the sky over Europe was filled with Allied aircraft, the Germans rolled out something onto the battlefield that greatly surprised everyone: the jet fighter Messerschmitt Me 262. This was a true breakthrough in aviation, as it became the first combat aircraft equipped with turbojet engines, as opposed to the usual piston engines. What kind of aircraft was it? Why was it feared? And how did it change the course of history? Let's take a closer look. Before the Me 262 appeared, Germany was already in a very difficult position on the fronts of World War II. After the first years of rapid success, when the Wehrmacht had captured a significant portion of Europe and part of the Soviet Union, by 1944, the situation for the Third Reich sharply deteriorated. Allied forces on the Western Front began to build up their strength, and the Soviet Union, after heavy defeats, managed to recover its combat readiness and go on the offensive. By this time, Germany was already feeling serious pressure from all sides, and its position was becoming critical. Since the end of 1942, the Allied air forces began actively bombing German cities, industrial sites, and transportation infrastructure. The bombings by the US and the UK essentially dealt a serious blow to the economy and military industry of the Third Reich. Factories producing airplanes, tanks, weapons, and ammunition were either destroyed or operating sporadically due to regular air raids. The British night bombings were especially severe, and during the day, American bombers would come to the rescue. Germany was in desperate need of defenses against the Allied aircraft that flew unopposed over its territory and destroyed strategic targets. The standard fighters, such as the Bf-109 and Febu-190, were unable to catch up with and effectively counter large formations of B-17 and B-24 bombers, which were escorted by Allied fighters. This became one of the reasons why the German military started looking for faster and more powerful means of air defense, which, in turn, led to the development of the Me 262 project. The project had the support of high-ranking Luftwaffe officers. One of them was Hans Kammler, a Luftwaffe general responsible for night aviation and the defense of German airspace. Kammler was one of the first to realize the importance of jet aviation and actively supported the 262 project. He understood that the Allies were increasingly carrying out mass bombings and that aircraft with greater speed and firepower were needed to counter this threat. He saw the Me 262 as a promising solution for this issue and actively lobbied for the development of jet aircraft. Work on jet aircraft in Germany began long before the war. German engineers understood that piston engine planes would eventually reach the limit of their effectiveness and sought new ways to increase the speed and power of aircraft. The Me 262 project was developed under the guidance of the famous German designer Willy Messerschmitt. He aimed to create a fighter capable of surpassing all competitors in speed and maneuverability. Willy Messerschmitt was born in 1898 and, from a young age, showed an interest in aviation. His engineering career began in the 1920s when he founded the Messerschmitt Company and started working on various aircraft projects. Even then, Messerschmitt established himself as a talented designer and innovator. But real success came in the 1930s when his company began collaborating with the Third Reich. In the early 1930s, Messerschmitt developed the famous Bf-109 fighter, which became the main aircraft of the Luftwaffe during World War II. This fighter proved its effectiveness in the skies over Spain and later in World War II, further strengthening Willy Messerschmitt's reputation as one of the leading aircraft designers of his time. However, Messerschmitt understood that the future of aviation lay with new technologies, and one of these directions was jet engines. In collaboration with talented engineers, Messerschmitt began developing a jet fighter that would be faster and more powerful than any existing aircraft. Thus, work on the Me 262 project began. The first prototype of the aircraft, designated Me 262-1, took to the skies in April 1941. However, it was equipped with a piston engine because the jet engines were not yet ready for installation. It was only in 1942 when the first turbojet engines, the Jumo 004, were developed, that the real testing of the aircraft as a jet fighter began. Despite technical difficulties, the project moved forward, and in 1944, the aircraft was adopted by the Luftwaffe. Another key figure in the creation of the Me-262 was Anselm Franz, the engineer responsible for developing the jet engines for the aircraft. His work on the Jumo 004 engine made it possible to introduce the first jet fighter into combat. Franz was an employee of Junkers, a company involved in developing aircraft engines. Under his leadership, the first world turbojet engine suitable for mass production was created. Despite the engine's considerable power, its production faced many challenges. Germany was suffering from a shortage of quality materials, and technological progress was too complex for mass production during wartime conditions. Nevertheless, it was the Jumo 004 engine that took the Me-262 to a new level compared to other aircraft. A total of around 1,400 Me-262 units were produced, but far fewer actually made it to the front. Despite this, pilots flying the Me-262 managed to achieve many victories in aerial combat, including successful attacks on enemy bomber formations. The main advantage of the 262 was its speed. It could reach speeds of up to 870 kilometers per hour, which was simply incredible for the time. No Allied piston engine fighter could catch it. While the Allies flew their P-51 Mustangs with speeds around 600 to 700 kilometers per hour, the Me-262 seemed like lightning compared to their slow machines. In addition to speed, the aircraft had very powerful armament. The nose of the aircraft was equipped with 430mm Make 108 cannons, which could literally tear enemy aircraft apart. The Me-262 deserves special attention because it featured many innovative solutions for its time. The wings of the Me-262 had a slight sweep, which was designed to improve stability at high speeds. Swept wings would later become the standard for jet aircraft, but in the 1940s this was an innovation. This wing shape helped the aircraft handle air resistance at supersonic speeds, a solution that foreshadowed future developments in jet aviation. Another key feature was its landing gear with a nose wheel. Most fighters of the time had bicycle-style landing gear with a tailwheel, which made takeoff and landing more complicated. The Me-262 was one of the first aircraft with a nose wheel, which improved its handling on the ground and made takeoff and landing smoother. This design became the standard for all subsequent jet aircraft. At the end of the war, the Allies began actively bombing German cities and factories, and the Me-262 became almost the only means of countering these mass attacks. Its mission was to intercept Allied aircraft such as the B-17 bombers. The Me-262's speed allowed it to quickly gain altitude, attack, and then escape from pursuit. After the war, the Allies, seeing the effectiveness of jet aircraft, began to develop their own jet programs. The British Gloucester Meteor and the American P-80 became the first jet fighters to enter service with the Allies after the war. The technologies used in the Me-262 were carefully studied and partially applied in the creation of new aircraft. Interestingly, even after the war, several Me-262s flew in other countries. For example, the Soviet Union and the US took some of the aircraft for study and testing. This helped speed up their own developments in jet aviation. The Messerschmitt Me-262 was a true revolution in aviation. This aircraft showed the world that the future lay with jet and set a trend that continues to this day. Modern fighters like the F-35 or Su-57 undoubtedly owe their appearance to the first jet fighter in history, the Me-262. Although this aircraft did not change the outcome of the war for Germany, it forever entered history as one of the best, most advanced, and innovative combat aircraft of its time. What do you think of this fighter? Share your thoughts in the comments.